Back on SportsLine, talking the Predators, who made their exit from the Stanley Cup playoffs last night, swept by the Colorado Avalanche 4-0. It was a 5-3 final last night, and a bitter disappointment because you really thought the way they played last night, good enough to win. The environment in the building tried to get them over the hump and get that first win and at least send the series back to Colorado. But it just showed you how good Colorado was, because Predators were dominating games 1 and 2. They weren't close. But in Game 3, they played a game that, minus a few mistakes, was good enough to win. Unfortunately, the mistakes were largely penalties, which led to 5 power plays for Colorado, and the Avs scored on 4 of them. That's the difference in the game. A 7-3 win, 4 power play goals. That was the difference. The mistakes by the Preds and Colorado being so good that they capitalized on all of them, essentially. Well, Game 4, they were even better. Very few penalties. Much more clean, much more of an attacking presence. They got into the offensive zone. They sustained zone time there. It felt like a game that the Predators should win. But the Avalanche come back and look like a top seed. They look the part of a Stanley Cup favorite, and they score 3 late goals and win 5-3 and end the series. They've got the handshakes on home ice, which you never want to have happen, and then the goodbye to the fans, because the season is over very quickly in round 1. Our phone lines are open, 737-7767. We'll start tonight with Tom. Tom, good evening and welcome to SportsLine.
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
I called in once before about a former Titans quarterback, and you told me the truth. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm disappointed. I was hoping the Stanley Cup was going to come here. But let me tell you, I'm 75 years old. I used to work in graphic arts and design logos. The Predators logo is a saber-toothed tiger.
Yep.
If that tiger was to close its mouth quickly, it would puncture its neck and bleed out in a matter of minutes. Just funny thing to talk about. Now, I have another question about football, if that's okay. Is it?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, when you hear, these players, this one's getting $5 million, this one's getting $20 million, all that stuff, where does that money come from?
Ownership. Ownership has the money. I mean, their teams are worth billions of dollars in the NFL, and that means all of them essentially had billions of dollars in the bank from various business interests going into owning the team. And, a lot of it comes from the revenue, specifically in terms of the working cash flow within the team. A lot of it comes from the television revenue in the league. A lot of it comes from attendance and sales at the stadium and merchandise and things like that. That's all licensed through the team. And so they bring that money in and then they recycle it back out in their payroll. That's kind of the working operations flow of a team, but all of these owners are billionaires. And so when you hear of a wide receiver like A.J. Brown, most recently getting $25 million a year from the Philadelphia Eagles, or any of those big name contracts, it comes from the backing of ownership that has billions of dollars in the bank.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you very much for straightening me out on that.
You bet. Glad to help, Tom. Appreciate the call. As always, our phone lines are still open, 737-7767. Let's go back to the Preds and go to the podium after the game last night. Coach John Hynes, first full season with the Predators where he had his own training camp, where he had a 82-game regular season and then into the playoffs. He's been on the job really for 3 years. He took over mid-season back in 2020. Last year, of course, the shortened season, all played in the spring. And now this year, really that first full season, he's done his best to put in his identity. He's gotten the Predators to the postseason each of those 3 years, but only 3 postseason wins to show for it in 3 years. And that is certainly frustrating for the Predators. Here was John Hynes after the game last night, a 5-3 loss in Game 4 that ended the season.
I feel like, you might have some momentum, John. You finally get that lead in the third. You feel like you might be able to close it out at that point?
Well, I thought our guys really played a good game tonight, and it was right there. But they wound up scoring. But I thought, the way that we want to talk about building off of Game 3 and finding the way to be able to get a win here tonight, and unfortunately we weren't able to do it. But I think our guys, had a hard-fought game. Unfortunately, tonight it didn't go the way we wanted.
Apologies, John.
That's okay.
How frustrating to be swept, first time that's happened in franchise history?
Well, it's certainly disappointing for sure. I mean, you come in and you work 82 games to be able to get in the playoffs, and unfortunately, this series didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, and the fact that we weren't able to win a game is something that we all take personal for sure.
I know it's early in the aftermath of it, but what's kind of your takeaway from that and not being able to win a game in this series, and where you guys kind of move on from here?
Well, I think there's certain things you have to look back to. I think as you said, tonight I would commend our guys for the effort that we had, and unfortunately we weren't able to find a way to win a game, and that's something that we've all got to be better. It's not it's not accepted by us, but we feel like we certainly deserve to be in the playoffs the way that we played and worked in the regular season, and unfortunately in this series we didn't find a way to get anything done.
John, what do you feel like happened maybe the last few weeks, last month of the season? Like the style you guys played, maybe were you down a little bit there at the end of the season?
No, you have to play hard every night in the regular season to make the playoffs. I mean, that's just what the NHL is. So, unfortunately, we weren't able to be able to find a way to win the games. But you go through 82 games, and you have to be able to compete night in and night out to be able to get in. And we were a team that we weren't picked to be anything. We picked seventh in the Central. We were picked not to be in the playoffs. And we formed an identity that gave us an opportunity in the regular season to be a team that can compete for the playoffs and get into the playoffs. And I commend the guys for that.
Do you feel like though that some things eroded in the last month or so with your game?
In what sense?
Well, just in terms of the performances. You had a lot of games where you gave up a lot of goals, probably from April until the end.
Yeah, I think that's something we can look at.
John, what was the injury that kept UC out of the postseason?
Lower body.
Telling final answer about UC Saros' lower body injury confirmed today as a high ankle sprain that kept him out of the postseason. Certainly made a difference. You would have liked to have think that a guy who also today was named as a Vezina Trophy finalist, one of the top goaltenders in the league, might have been able to steal you a game, but that's not going to win you a series when you lose it 4-0 otherwise. When you give up the volume of shots and the high danger chances that the Predators gave up overall in this series. You heard people talking in about what happened late in the year to John Hynes and the Preds, to this team that started so hot this year but couldn't keep it up down the stretch and then totally faded. I mean, they lost 8 of their last 9 games overall. 8 of 9. The only game they won was in a shootout. Still in the regular season. They simply ran out of gas for whatever reason it was at the end, and it wasn't good enough, obviously. But one of the things that you're going to have to ask yourself to go along with that is this Predators team this season had some of the best individual seasons in the history of the franchise. Roman Josi had 96 points this season. There hasn't been a defenseman in the NHL that has had a 90-point season in nearly 3 decades. You have to go back to 1992, so exactly 3 decades, to find the last time somebody had 96 points in a season. So that was a once in legitimately Roman Josi's lifetime accomplishment that he had. The Predators had never had a 40-goal scorer before this year. Both Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg top 40 goals. Ryan Johansson and Mikael Granlund played well this year. Tanner Jeannot led all rookies in the NHL in goals, and then you have a goaltender who's supposedly one of the 3 best in the league as a Vezina Trophy finalist. That's a ton of really good individual accomplishments, and on one hand you think, that's great. That must be good coaching, that must be a good system, that must mean good players. On the other hand, you have to look at it and say, all of that stuff happened, and the Predators, by points, were the final team into the playoffs. They were the number 2 wild card in the Western Conference and had a lower number of points than any team in the Eastern Conference. And once they were in the playoffs, they got swept in 4 games. So as you move forward, what's the likelihood that you can duplicate all that individual success when guys are legitimately having career years? How likely is it that you can do it again next year, the year after? And where does the success come from? If it didn't happen this year with those types of numbers, what has to be different for this team to be better? Because I don't know if you can count on 96 points from a defenseman again next year, as good as Roman Josi is. And I don't know if you can count on 40-goal seasons from two guys who've never had 40-goal seasons before. Those are the types of questions that all of those guys have to be asking themselves. We'll go back to the phones. Say hello to Adam. Adam, good evening. Thanks for the call.
Hey, man. So what's curious for me is, and I love what you said about Josi, man. I don't think you want to waste Josi. Like, nobody's done what he did this year in 30 years. And we still, I mean, we're the only playoff series that wasn't competitive. I didn't expect them to come in here and beat the Avs, but they shouldn't have even played the Avs. I'm more disappointed with how you let your foot off of a 4-0 lead at the end of the regular season to put yourself in that position. It's almost like you deserved it. So my problem is that not only were they much, much faster than us this series, I expected somebody to Borowski it. You know, I wanted somebody to fight, somebody to beat them up, so that way if we lost the series, at least they're going into the next series knowing they played the Preds and that it made it harder. That was the I've never witnessed. I started watching the Preds pretty hard in like 2014. I've never seen us get beat that badly.
Oh, no. No, you have
not
to
even close, right?
You got to go way back. And even those series, they've never been swept before, so it's never been like that.
I mean, it was uncomfortable to watch as a Preds fan because you still see all the faces that you know are good players. It's like you said, well, what fixes it? I think it has to be, and I'm not a fire everybody the day after the playoffs guy, but what I am is a realist that goes, hey, even Floyd Reese got fired once. Hey, even, so the guys who are picking these players and arranging this, that sometimes they have to be the next guy. And you can't fall on Laviolette anymore, man. It's pretty much you. So I think it has to be him this time.
Yeah, I mean, you may be right. David Poiles has done so much. And, Adam, I appreciate the call. So much for this franchise. He is this franchise. He helped them get off the ground. He helped them build the foundation. He made them competitive when the financial situation and, frankly, the ownership situation in the beginning days didn't lend itself to being competitive. And he deserves a ton of credit for that. And he will always be sort of the godfather of Nashville hockey. But you do have to wonder, at 72 years of age, how much longer does David Poile want to do this? And is he equipped to go in a rebuild or a retool or however you want to classify it and help this team get to the next level right now? Because they were so close a few years ago, and only he'd be able to answer this, but had the Predators won in 2017 and hoisted that cup, I don't know if David Poile will still be the GM. He might have ridden off into the sunset with that Stanley Cup championship that has been elusive throughout his Hall of Fame career. But he thought he was close, and he kept back, and it came back, and he came back. And I know he wants it. Everybody wants it. Everybody who's ever been in hockey wants the cup. There's no question about it. But it's a different challenge now. This is not a just run it back with this team, because we saw how good this team was. This team has to get a lot better, whether it's this season or next season. They got to get a lot better. And how much longer does David Poile want to invest into doing that? That's going to be a big, big question. And then where is the ownership in this? I mean, if you're a Predators fan, you have to love the ownership group here, because they don't micromanage. They let the hockey people do the hockey thing. They let the business people do the business side of hockey. And they stay out of it. They open up their pockets. They've built one of the best arenas and best environments in sports. They're allowing the team now to go after big-time free agents in a way that they couldn't do 15 years ago when the ownership situation was in flux. You've got to love the owners. But there is a downside when your owners are hands-off like that. A lot of times you get upset when the owner is a Jerry Jones type or whatever, if you're a fan, because you're thinking, gosh, would you stay out of it? Would you stop thinking you're the GM and stay out of the football stuff? Just be the owner. Just build the stadium, make sure it's a great place to go on game day, and have the financial backing to get the players. That's what you want, generally, as an owner. But the thing you are never lacking with a Jerry Jones type is the understanding of exactly how he feels about the franchise. And again, sometimes that's a detriment. But it feels like after this run of several seasons, and now 4 consecutive years where the Predators have not been able to win in the playoffs. They've still gotten there, but they have not been able to win in the postseason. It feels like now's the time where you kind of need someone in ownership to step up and say, here's how we feel where we're at. Our expectations weren't to be this good, and we got into the playoffs, and so we feel like this is a good sign moving forward and the direction's going in a positive way. Or maybe they say, look, our expectation at this point in this franchise, like many of our fans, is to be better than what we just saw. So it's got to be better than this. And therefore, we're going to make this move, or therefore, everyone's on notice. I don't expect very strong language from this ownership group because they've never operated that way. In a lot of ways, they treat themselves as fans, as members of the community. That's what's so special. They saved the team and kept them here all those many years ago. They didn't necessarily set out to be hockey owners. They did it for the betterment of Nashville, to keep hockey, to keep another Major League sports team in this city. And they've done a great job. But right now, to know the direction of the franchise would be reassuring, I think, for a lot of people. Because David Poiles has continually given us, we're not that far off. We feel like we can do this or add this piece and we'll be right back there. And now it's 4 years where the Predators have been nowhere close to being right back there. And Poiles himself isn't getting any younger. John Hynes' contract is up. Oh, by the way, Barry Trotz just got fired in New York. I'm not saying that they bring him back necessarily, but the other most important piece in terms of managing Nashville hockey is Barry Trotz, who was here forever at the beginning as the head coach and battled through all of those things. And guess what happened when Barry Trotz left? And he had all the resources in the world. He won a Stanley Cup, and he went to New York, and he won 28 playoff games in 3 years before getting fired this year after missing the playoffs once. Would Barry Trotz be a good hire back in Nashville? I think he would be. With the guys on this team? Absolutely. I think Barry Trotz would make the Predators better tomorrow. Do you make that move? Is it fair to John Hynes? Are you out on that experiment? Those are all the things that they need to be having the discussion about how close they need to get, what they need to do to get to that level. And I hope they are, but I hope the ownership is involved. Because ultimately, they're the conduits to you and me and everybody else that lives in this community that pays attention to the team. I mean, David Poiles loves this city. He loves the franchise. Sean Henrique loves the city and loves the franchise and the fans. Everybody who's a part of the hockey operations over there's that. But a lot of them aren't from Nashville. They work in professional sports. They came to Nashville because of this. Players come and go, coaches come and go, all that. But the fan base and the city always remains with the team. And that's the thing about these owners. They are the closest thing, with a few more $1 million in the bank, that you get to us. You know? If you're sitting on your couch tonight watching this show, you don't have a shot like Philip Forsberg. You can't skate through the neutral zone like Roman Josi and set other people up. You're not going to fight like Mark Borowiecki when people need to get fired up or make a save like UC Saros. But you live here just like that ownership group does. And you maybe have deep ties to the community just like they do. And you want the best just like they do. And that's the thing, where it might be time for them to step up and at least talk about where those discussions are leading and what the plan is, what the direction they feel like the team is headed. We'll take another break. Our phone lines are still open, 737-7767. We'll also hear from the captain, Roman Josi, coming up here on SportsLine.